A new study claims that the main reason people walk their dogs is because it makes both them and the dog happy. As a person who has a dog, this really surprised me because the main reason I walk my dog is because if I don't, he will literally shit all over my apartment. And this will honestly make both me and the dog unhappy. Me because I have to clean it up, and the dog because he has to spend the next 30 minutes or so not getting snuggles because I'm too angry. The study was qualitative, meaning that it only had a few participants. Only about a dozen dog-owning families were interviewed, but it was very in-depth, using interviews with each subject to look at the perceived benefits of walking a dog. The researchers found that people weren't likely to take their dogs on walks due to keeping up their own human health, although that is a secondary benefit. Walking is good for you. People were more likely to want to go on walks because it makes the dog happy, and in return, that makes the human happy. I wasn't originally going to do a video about this as I read it over and it seemed there was nothing particularly groundbreaking here. But then I took my dog, Indy, for a walk, and while on that walk, I decided to make a slightly more personal video. Indy, come here. Come here. Come here. This is Indy. I got him about 8 months ago when he was just a little tiny fluff ball. It was January. I had just gotten through a really painful breakup in which my ex actually stole my cats, and I was living on my own for the first time in years, and there was a random guy on YouTube threatening to murder me. So yeah, it was a fun time, really fun time. I get extremely attached to animals, and I already have anxiety and depression, so I was in a pretty bad state. I went to my psychiatrist and got an increase in my SSRIs, escitalopram, which I used to deal with my depression. I also described what I was going through, and I asked her if she thought an emotional support dog might be a good idea for me. She actually agreed with me. I felt like I needed an animal in my life, but I couldn't bring myself to replace my cats that I was still mourning. Plus, I've always wanted my own dog, and a dog would help me feel safer in the event that a man from YouTube showed up to murder me one day. So she said, yeah, I do think that a dog could help you out. So a few weeks later, I happened across a woman who had a puppy she couldn't keep. The puppy was living in a car. She was going to give him to a shelter, but she really didn't want to. So she gave him to me. She said that she thought he was a German Shepherd lab mix, which was exactly what I wanted. I wanted a big, smart, intimidating dog who was also maybe a little cuddly. Spoiler alert, Indy is almost certainly none of those except for cuddly. To make matters worse, when he was just a puppy, I hated him. I hated his guts at times. Puppies are basically machines that take kibble and water and transform them into shit and piss, which they deposit all over your house all the time, morning, noon, and night. And it's really terrible. I had to take him out for walks almost constantly in the hopes that he would just accidentally pee outside, but generally he would hold it until we got inside, at which point he would pee there. Walking him was a chore because it was like a soggy, cold winter. And in the evenings, I would be exhausted and depressed, and I would want to deal with that by just lounging around in my underpants, getting super high and or drunk because I was depressed. But I couldn't do those things. I had to stay dressed and sober because at any moment, every 2 hours or so, I would have to take this little fluff ball outside, or I would have to clean up whatever mess he made inside. So I was miserable. And there were a lot of times when I thought, what is the point of having this emotional support puppy when he makes me more anxious and he keeps me from doing the things that I want to do to cope with my depression and anxiety. But eventually, I realized that the things that I did, that I wanted to do to cope, were ultimately really unhealthy. It was harder to keep my pants on and stay sober, drink water instead of wine. It was harder to go outside for a walk instead of watching Netflix. But ultimately, it was better for me. And if Indy hadn't have been there to force me to do those things, I would probably be way worse off today. And now Indy is the puppy equivalent of a tween, and he's a really good one. He no longer has accidents in the house. He rarely eats things that he's not supposed to, like napkins or USB cables, which are apparently delicious to puppies. And he makes me smile constantly, like every time I look at him. He's basically the living embodiment of sunshine and happiness. And he no longer needs to go for walks every 2 hours, but he does manage to get both of us out of the house at least 5-6 times a day, for like a walk or a run or a game of fetch. And sure enough, yeah, it makes him happy and it makes me happy too. So I didn't get the big, smart, intimidating dog that I thought I wanted, but I did end up getting the emotional support dog I needed.